dancers, class of 2020. This is Mr. Teffer, your band director. I'm coming at you from my backyard patio kitchen here, and I'm going to show you some barbecue tricks. We're going to grill some steaks and chicken. We're also going to do some low and slow barbecued ribs that I have here. I'm shooting the videos a little bit out of order today. We've got some construction noise and whatever else going down in our little midtown chateau here. So I'm really looking forward to bringing these tips and tricks today. I hope you enjoy. Let me know in the comments what you think. Okay, so I've got a baby back ribs here. Normally I like to do spare ribs, but some of the meat shortages recently this is about all I could find. So the first thing you want to do is take it out of the cryo pack and then rinse it off and towel it dry. Then you want to take the back here. This is called the membrane, and it's an impenetrable surface that will not accept seasoning. So you want to remove that. You want to take a fork or a knife and find a spot. Sometimes you might have to use a sharper knife just to pierce it just a little bit.
Okay, so the neighbors behind the fence started this really loud trench digging machinery, so I'm going to overdub this audio here. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking a paper towel, and I'm going to use that to grip the membrane, and I'm just going to tug straight back, and that should get it all off. You can take another pass if you need to, like I'm doing here. And then you're going to take some Dijon mustard and spread that, probably about a tablespoon on each side of the meat. What that does is it helps it develop a really nice color, and it also helps bind the seasoning to the meat. For seasonings, I have a different variety of seasonings that I like to use. A couple from Oklahoma Joe's, and then one called Big Mike's. I like the Big Mike's just because that's the flavor profile that I like. It has brown sugar, it has salt, it has garlic powder, it has onion powder, it has paprika, it has cayenne powder, it has chili flakes. So you've got a really nice savory blend of sweet and heat. And then we're just going to spread it nice and evenly over the meat. You always want to pat and not rub. It's kind of funny, they call it a dry rub, but you're actually patting it, because if you rub it, it'll just spread it out unevenly and get stuck to your fingers. So as soon as you get that done, you want to put it on some saran wrap or some plastic wrap, and then we'll cover it. Probably want to do a second layer there, and then you'll wrap it up in foil, and you will put it in the fridge to rest, probably about 3 to 4 hours.
Okay, so we have our grill station set up here. The first thing we're going to do is just make sure we have all the basics here. We have a trash can that we can dump all of our unneeded things in. We've got aluminum foil, we've got plastic wrap, we've got black nitrile gloves that'll keep our hands protected and the food safe. We've got one of the most important things that you need here is a meat thermometer. I have two different styles here. They're both digital instant read thermometers. This one goes straight in. This one has a little pokey thing that you have to pull out. They both work great. Some optional things that you can get: an infrared thermometer to help you tell how hot your grill is. Then you also have a dual probe temperature thermometer here. This one will tell you the inside of your grill as well while you're doing the longer cook. And this larger probe will go straight into the meat and tell you. It can also have a wireless connection, so I could be sitting up on my deck upstairs and not have to run down and check the temperature all the time. Next, we have our working station here. I got this nice grill table, but you don't need a big table like this. You could use a card table. You could use anything that's a flat, level, horizontal surface. So we have our prep station right here. We've got a nice big wooden cutting board. We've got a salt cellar. We've got our basic salt and pepper. We've got some oil here for the grill. I'll get into all that later. Then we have our tongs. We also have some kitchen shears. We have a couple different types of tongs. You'll need tongs for your coals, you'll need tongs for your uncooked meat, and you'll need tongs for your cooked meat. Then we have a grill brush, a grill light for when it gets dark outside. Then over course here we have some temperature gloves, a cold beverage to keep you hydrated. Of course, then the star of the show here. This is just a Weber kettle style grill. It's about $150 to $200 depending, but it's a very high quality, very versatile type of grill. You can do just about anything with it, and I'll get into that in a little bit here. Your types of fuel that you have, we have our regular briquette style, and then we also have lump charcoal, which I'll get into a little bit later. I use the briquettes for grilling, and I use the lump charcoal for barbecue. And of course we have some lighter fluid and some things to get started. These are boneless, skinless, organic, air-chilled chicken breasts, and this is a nice center cut Casey strip. If you notice the marbling on there, it's got a beautiful marble, just a little bit of fat on there that will cook off nicely. The first thing we're going to do is season these. Notice I have a glove for handling the meat, and I have an open hand for handling the seasoning, and you don't want to mess these around, okay? So for the chicken, I'm just going to use my barbecue all-purpose seasoning. Works great because I'm going to infuse this with a little bit of smoke once I get the grill going. So all I'm going to do is just shake, cover the meat, again, not too much, but a nice little coating there. Pat, don't rub. Again on this side, pat, don't rub. Flip to the other side. Here. Okay. Shake off some of the excess. Flip around the coat. And we're good. The only seasoning that you need for great steak is kosher salt and black pepper. We're actually not even going to use the pepper till the end, so we'll keep that off to the side. We're going to coat this nice and evenly in kosher salt. Okay, and I'm going to pat again, flip. I'm going to coat. If you think that's too much, it's not. I'm going to pick this up, I'm going to coat it on the side, flip, coat it on the side again, just a final dusting. Now one more thing about safety. It's very, very important you're working with fire, that you need to be in a place where you're not going to set anything on fire. We have a deck up here. A lot of people, if they do charcoal grills or even gas grills, they'll be up on their deck, which is, you know, fire and wood. What do you think is going to happen? So you have to be very careful. Here we're just down on our basement slab where we're out of the way. This is an old fence, it's not going to hurt anything. Now a great thing about the Weber kettle grill is that you can light the charcoal right on top of the bottom grill grate. So what I'm going to do is actually, for my fire starter, is I'm just using a little bit of a cardboard box, a little bit of lighter fluid. I'm actually not going to pour the lighter fluid on the charcoal. That's what kind of gives charcoal the misnomer of tasting lighter fluidy, because people dump everything right on the coals. If you don't, if you just use lighter fluid to start the kindling, then you're going to have a much cleaner cook. So I'm just going to do just a little bit, enough for it to get soaked in. Grab my stick lighter. Always have to use a stick lighter, that way you keep away from the heat. I'm going to cover the chimney. Now this is a really good investment, the charcoal chimney. It keeps everything nice and vertical, and you are able to cook faster. My cat also enjoys it. Until the fire starts, then she gets panicky. Okay, then we make sure that the fire is rolling. It takes about 25 to 30 minutes. You want to wait until the top charcoal gets ashy, and then we'll make our fire. Okay, I've got my grill chimney is ready to go. As you can see here, the coals are ashed over on top, but not all the way ashed through. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pour the coals on one side of the grate down here. Okay. keep it over on the right side here because we're going to set up 2 zones for cooking. This is called dual zone cooking, and this will allow for both direct heat and indirect heat. And I'll be able to control my vents down here for airflow that comes through up top. So I've got my charcoal on, I've got my indirect heat and my direct heat set up. I put my grill grate back on top. What I'm going to do is let the grill preheat for about 10 minutes. It's also going to make any kind of charred bits that I had from a previous cook a lot easier to scrape off. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes and my grill is ready to go. I'm going to come in here and take a look. Notice that I have the open, you can control, this is very hot, so I want to make sure you're wearing your gloves, but I can control the vents here of how much airflow is coming in. I also have the airflow open down here, and that creates ventilation. So we can sear, we can also indirect heat. So I'm going to take this off. Now the first thing I'm going to do is clean it and make sure that there's nothing stuck to it. I always give it a nice once over once it's nice and hot. Now there is some research out there, and there are some anecdotal evidence of, you know, the little grill tines, these little guys flaking off and possibly getting inside in your food. I've never had an issue with that, but there is a solution to that. I have just a little bit of canola vegetable oil here, and I have a paper towel. I'm going to place, about 3 tablespoons worth of canola oil on my paper towel. Let it soak in for a second. Turn it around. Use some long-handled tongs. Again, tongs that have not touched food. I just use my grill tongs for these. I'm going to coat the entire grill. That will keep the grate slick, and also if there are any of those little barbs on there, it'll be taken up by that. Okay, we've had our meat sitting out for a little bit. We've had the steak out for about an hour at room temperature. The heavy coating of salt, that keeps the bacteria off. I did put the chicken back into the fridge for a while. There's something called the danger zone in cooking. You don't want your meat to be between 40 and 100, 165 for very long. So we want to keep the chicken refrigerated. The steak can be okay, and that'll eventually cook up really quickly. So the internal temperature on the steak is probably about 65 and probably about 50 here. So now we're going to go ahead and put it on the grill. And if you see, I don't know how well you can see, but you can see that this steak has absorbed the salt, and then a nice slurry has formed and then sunk back into the meat, and it's also become dry on top. That's going to really help with a really nice sear. I also did paper towel dry the chicken as well. That way it doesn't form to the grill. Okay, so I've got my grill ready here. Also a new set of tongs. I'm going to put the steak on the indirect, as far away from the coals as I possibly can. That might seem counterintuitive, but what we're going to do is we're going to raise the internal temperature of the meat to about 100 degrees, and then we're going to flash sear it. The chicken's a little bit thinner, but I still am going to do a reverse sear on that. I'm going to put the meatier parts of the chicken closer to the fire. All right, so I'll put it like this. I also have a little bit of Missouri white oak that I've soaked a little bit on the side. That's going to have a nice little bit of smoke flavor to the meat. And I'm just going to let this sit. Okay, let's talk about meat thermometers really quickly. So I have my meat thermometer here, and I'll check my steak here in just a minute. A lot of people think that if you use a meat thermometer that it's going to break the sear, or they think the sear seals in the juices. Actually, what a sear does is cause something called the Maillard reaction, which causes the sugars and the proteins to caramelize on top of the meat, and it dries it out and creates a really nice crust that helps us enjoy the flavor. It actually doesn't seal anything in. You think about meat like strings of proteins, all right? So a steak actually functions more like a sponge rather than a water balloon. So if you stick a sponge you might lose a little bit from the cells that you're puncturing, but you're actually not going to be draining the steak of its flavor. Okay, it's been about 5 to 7 minutes on indirect heat with the lid closed. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a temperature check here on the chicken. You've got about 105 on this guy. And about 106 on this guy, so we're pretty even. Always stick the thermometer into the thickest point of the meat. Steak, we are at about 95, 96. Now that's getting pretty close. So I am going to transition over to high heat. Now the great thing about this is that if I have it on high heat and I decide this one's cooking really fast, I can take it over to indirect heat really quick without really losing anything. Same thing for the steak. I will go for grill marks and cross patterns on the steak just to make it look pretty, but you actually don't really need that. All we really want is a nice, good, thick sear. We're gonna sizzle as we put it on. And now I'm going to keep it uncovered, and at about 2 minutes I'll give it a quarter turn, flip it again, quarter turn, and then I'll do another temperature check. Okay, I ended up putting the lid down because I had a little bit of a flare up. If you do have a flare up, just put the lid on, it should extinguish it. Ready to turn here. Got a beautiful sear here. Turn this guy. Notice I turned the steak around so we can have a little bit thicker part here towards the hotter part of the fire. Had these on for a few minutes, and you know, some of your parents might disagree with me, but it is okay to flip the meat more than once. It's not gonna hurt it. You're not gonna dry it out. You're not gonna squeeze it out. All you need to do is keep rotating just a little bit. Of course, you don't wanna dote over it. My wife will tell me that I tend to dote over the food I'm cooking sometimes. She's standing right behind the camera and laughing. But it is okay to flip it more than once, because we want to heat. Now that we have direct radiant heat happening, you are only cooking it from one side, and you don't want the sides to get overcooked. So you want to keep it rotated just a little bit. I'm not going to mess with it a bunch, but it's okay. So we've got our chicken sitting at about 165. That's the temperature that you want to take it off. Our biggest chicken is 165. Sometimes they heat up differently, so you always want to check them. I know some people do them by feel, but you really can't tell to a number. So I'm going to keep this one on a little bit. I'm going to move my more cooked one over. My steak is just a little bit under yet, so I'm going to rotate him one more time. Look at that beautiful piece of meat. You can feel as well. I'm going for about medium rare, so I'll take it off about 120, and then I'll cover it with foil and let the carryover heat and let all the juices redistribute, and that'll take it up to about 125 on the 30. Okay, so my meat hit about 120, so I pulled it, I put it on some foil. Next thing I'm going to do is just finish it with just a little bit more salt here, and then I'm going to hit it with some cracked pepper, fresh cracked pepper, and I'm going to let it rest for about 5 minutes. So I've got my last chicken breast. The thickest part of the meat is reading 163, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it. I'm also going to let that rest for about 5 minutes just to let it settle down a little bit right next to my steak, and then we're going to eat. Okay, Lancers, we've reached the grand reveal. Here's our beautiful chicken breasts that were reverse seared and offset cooked with a little bit of Missouri white oak to flavor. There is our KC strip cooked, hopefully to perfection. I'm going to cut it just down the middle just to see. Here we go. Perfect. Bam. It's a little rare, but I like it that way. Okay, and we're back after that wonderful melt in your mouth steak. Now we're going to start doing some barbecue. All right, so first of all, we're going to talk about the kind of fuel we're going to use today. For the steaks, I used briquettes. These are just your regular big brand Kingsford. What I like about these is that they burn longer. They're very consistent. They're always going to be the same size. They're very safe, especially if you're not quite used to managing a fire. What I love about lump charcoal, now this is actually Missouri oak wood that's been partially burned and compressed, and that's how they make charcoal. And so this will, as you see, it's all sorts of different sizes. We've got little sizes, we've got big sizes. But what it does is it burns a lot hotter, and it burns very clean. So in your barbecue, you're not going to get a lot of charcoal taste. You're actually going to get a smoke flavor, which is what we get from here. And it just so happens that this charcoal and this wood are made out of the same thing, the same type of Missouri white oak. I get this at Woodyard Barbecue up in Mission. Really good place. You can get whole cords of wood, you can get chips, you can get chunks. I tend to prefer these chunks. And you see what I'm doing here is I'm soaking them in water. Not an absolutely critical thing to do. It's actually, whenever it's soaking, it only gets it within a millimeter or two, but it keeps it from flaring up, it keeps it from starting on fire, and it keeps from getting too hot. So I will use these chunks of wood for the smoke. I'll use this for the fuel for the fire, and we'll get going here in just a second. All right, my charcoal's ready to go. Just like I did with the steaks and the chicken, I'm going to put it off to the side. We're going to do an indirect, and then I'm going to show you a couple little other things here too. So, again, my heat gloves on. Empty over to the side. Then I'm going to range here. And then I'm going to take a couple of these soaked wood chunks. I'm going to put it right around the side. I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. Got 2 wood chunks. You really don't need that much. I'm just going to put it right on the edge of the fire. Okay, here's the inside of the grill here. Notice I've got the wood chunks over here on the right, on the bottom right. Then I've got our hot coals. Looks like they're flaming up a little bit, so I'll need to just put the lid on here real quick. But then if you look to the top left, I've got some unburned ones. And those are just gonna start gradually lighting as the charcoal makes its way around. The smoke is going and the grill is settling down to a temperature that I want. A couple different schools of thought on this. You can do low and slow, which is around 225 degrees, or you can do hot and fast, which is anywhere from 350 to 450, and it just depends on how close you want it, what kind of profile you're looking for. Kind of the newer trend in the barbecue circuits today is doing it a little bit hotter and faster, and that's what I found out that I like to do, because I don't want to wait 7 hours for ribs to be done. So I'm going to go ahead and do a hotter and faster. I've got my probe thermometer. It's down on the grill grate inside, about right there. Right now it's at 382 reading, so I'm going to let it go down a little bit. And again, you control your fire using these open and shut valves down and below, getting that convective heat going. And you notice the coals are going to be here, the meat's going to be here, so you've got that airflow coming up through the meat. That way it gets the smoke. Another thing is you don't see a lot of smoke, but if you were here with me, you can smell it. You actually want the barbecue smoke to be thin and wispy, not big and heavy. If it's big and heavy smoke, it's going to overdo the wood, the flavor of the smoke, and you're not going to be able to taste that flavor profile that you want. And now we're ready to put the ribs on the grill. So I have my rack of ribs that we marinated or put the rub on, the mustard and spice rub on about 6 hours ago. So it's been chilling in the fridge. I put it out again about 30 minutes ago, just to let it rise up internally a little bit before it gets into the danger zone. And I'm going to put this on the grill. I'll show you how in just a second. I will also fill up a spray bottle with apple juice, and every 30 minutes I'm going to spray with apple juice. That helps it maintain its crust and keeps it from drying out too much on the top. Just going to put them right on the grill. I always try to put the thicker spot, and actually I want to do it the other way around. Now we've got the fat side towards the fire, bone side to the back, and we're just going to cover them up and let them sit about 30 minutes. Okay, it's been about 35 minutes or so. As you can see, it's just barely got any color to it. I'm going to give it a few sprays. That. And I'm also going to insert our temperature thermometer, our probe, and I'm going to find, again, the thickest part in between a rib. That way we get an accurate reading. If it's too close to the bone, you might get a false reading. I'm also going to warm my fire up a little bit by putting up in a couple more lumps here. Our temperature has gone down to about 250, which is still great, but we want to keep it up in that higher range. Okay, so we've had about 2 hours on the smoke. We've got a nice bark forming here, is what we call it whenever the smoke interacts with all the seasonings and starts to get a little bit of a crust on it. Now we're going to, and the temperature on the meat is about 180 internally, and then the temperature on the smoker is about 300 or so. We've been kind of between 250 and 300, which is exactly where we wanted it. So what I'm going to do now is a wrapping technique. It's known as the Texas crutch in some circles. Otherwise, some people call it the 3-2-1 method. But basically, we've been open smoke for 2 hours. We're going to infuse it with a few ingredients to make that, to make it a little bit more moist, a little more juicy. And we're going to put it back. We're going to wrap it, put it back on the grill for about an hour or so until it reaches up to about 195. Then we'll finish it off, unwrapped to finish off that nice bark. So what I've got here is I have melted butter, I have light brown sugar, I have my favorite barbecue sauce, Sweet Baby Ray's, one of them. One quick sidebar, when I started doing competitions and really started getting into barbecue, I started making my own sauces and seasonings. And then I would go to competitions and I would do more looking around about what the pros do. And a lot of them just use store-bought stuff. So don't feel like you're cheating yourself if you do that. Most of the ingredients in barbecue sauces and rubs have pretty much all the same things. Once you start getting into making your own sauces and rubs, if you want to, it's a lot of fun. They don't last as long in the fridge or the cabinet or the pantry, and they just, I don't know, it's just not worth the trouble for me. So I've gone to the store brand stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour a little bit of our melted butter. Nobody ever said this is healthy. Right over there. A lot of people use Parquet. I don't mind Parquet, but it also, it has preservatives, it has other stuff in it, and you might as well just use pure unsalted butter. I'm going to do that on both sides. When you do competitions, you can clear off the little black parts here. That just makes it look a little more tidy for the judges. Also, if you're doing judged competitions, you'd want to use spare ribs, not baby backs, but we like both of those at the Tepfer household. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, I've got my butter there. I'm going to take brown sugar. This seems like a lot. I was shocked when I first learned how much brown sugar goes into ribs. Some people use agave nectar, some people use different kinds of syrups. I'm also going to put some local honey on there as well. And this is brand new, so I'm going to open it real quick. This is Beckmeyer's honey from Missouri. So it's always nice to use local honey, support your local beekeepers. Then we add a little bit of barbecue sauce, like so. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to the other side with my brown sugar. Get a nice coat on there. This will help to caramelize, like I talked about with the steak earlier, about the Maillard reaction. Getting that lovely char on there. The sugars will caramelize, marry into the meat, and actually they'll dissipate quite a bit. So it looks like a lot. I'm probably even being a little conservative here compared to what our guys on the circuit do. It's looking a little bit thick for my tastes, so I'm going to hit it with a little bit of our applesauce just to lighten that up a little bit. Nice glaze. Do that on the other side. Perfect. Now I'm going to put this aside and wrap. You don't want to, some people put, they even put orange juice, they'll put other liquids in there. Basically what we're doing, if you know about cooking techniques, is a hybrid technique. This is basically a bake and a braise at the same time. You're going to be using its own liquids to further cook it along, which some barbecue purists look down at. They think it should be all smoke all the time, and then you're eating beef jerky. So I like to wrap it. Leave a little bit of space in there for all of that to marinate a little bit too. And then we'll go ahead and put it back on the grill. Okay, so we've got, it's been about an hour, maybe a little bit over, and we reached about 180 to 190 degrees, depending on where you're at on the rack. And so that's a good time to unwrap it and go ahead and finish it off with our final step. Careful, it is very hot. If you don't know what you're doing, you might want to keep your oven gloves on. Ooh, okay. Alright, so take this off. Now it looks like it still needs a little bit more bark. It needs a little bit more char, and it does. So what we're going to do for the last hour or so is we're just going to put a little bit more of our barbecue sauce. Baste it on here. A little bit on the back side. So we just had an interesting thing happen. In barbecue, it's called a stall. What happens there is where the temperature gets up to a certain point, your fire starts to die a little bit, and then it just hits a plateau. It happens usually around the 145 to 165 temperature range. Even when you've got consistent heat going, sometimes that can stall. The best thing to do is just to be patient, wait it out. But with what happened with us, we were at about 180, 185, just almost close to being ready to pull the ribs, which will go to about 195 or so. I did have to add a little bit of charcoal, so the fire went down a little bit, but you just add a little bit and then close the lid, don't fuss with it, and eventually it'll pull it back out. So we've got, it added probably another 30 minutes or so. So that's why you need to monitor your cook and just be really aware of what to do when there's a stall. One thing that people can do too much of is, they fire up a whole new chimney of briquettes or charcoal, and it ends up burning it. So that's the last thing you want to do is panic. Okay, we've hit about 203 degrees. It's time to pull. Perfect. Beautiful color. Nice pull here. It should bend but not break. You do not want fall off the bone ribs. I'll tell you more in a minute here. I'm just going to go ahead and pull these off. One of the biggest myths in barbecue, or when people talk about ribs, is that, I just had fall off the bone ribs, they were so great. Well, that might be their opinion, and that's fine, but really, really well done ribs will have just a little bit of tug to them. If there's too much pull, that they're just going to fall right off the bone. They're actually going to be a little bit dry, and you're going to have to overcome that with sauce. So a really good rib should have a little bit of a tug to it, just a little bit of a bite through, and a nice smoke ring, and we'll check that here in just a few. Okay, here are the beautiful ribs ready to slice. The best way to do it is to turn it upside down. That way you can see the bone structure back here. You always want to cut it in between. I always do a little bit of an extra one right here. That way I've got two on this smaller guy here. Then just go straight in between. Yummy, yummy, yummy. And there they are. Got a nice smoke ring there. Perfect. Nice bark. Let's give it a try. And now, the true test. Perfect. Nice tug, nice char. Thanks for watching, Lancers. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'll attach my recipes in the comments as well. I hope you have a great rest of your senior semester, what's left of it, and I wish you all the best of luck in the future.